Welcome to the Everyday Citizens Tactical Podcast, episode 43, Water, Business, and Community. My name is Jeremy and I will be your host. Today I'm joined by Zach, who is the founder and owner of Cana Provisions. Zach tells us about the inspiration behind his business, how this small business has grown, and the importance of community. So sit back, grab a cup of water, and let's begin.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. And Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. For those that do not know, Zach is the owner of Cana Provisions. So, Zach, if you would, for those that don't know the face behind the company logo, please tell everybody a bit about yourself.
Well, they'll have to go without the face. They'll just have to go with the voice,
Just the voice.
For the moment. I actually just had a funny conversation with one of our customers who was talking about there's an appearance that Cana is bigger or is not something, or is something that it's not. And I'm going to just come right out of the gate and say we are a small family-owned business. It is my wife and I, at this point, aren't even running it full time, which is the crazy part about this. And yeah, it's I would say grown at an exponential rate, and we're actually able to do this because of my wife's background in business administration and accounting. So she is the one. Her name is Mel. So if any of you guys have exchanged emails with Mel, she is the one who is doing accounts receivable, accounts handling, inventory management, and then she also serves to manage our employees. So we have people who are doing specific tasks for us, and then we contract other tasks out that are very specialized. So that allows us to keep a very light footprint, but it also allows us to continue to bring new products to market, I would say rapidly, but then we can also serve a really broad diversity of products as well.
Interesting.
So yeah,
I would not have
husband
guessed.
and wife team. No, you go.
Oh, sorry. I said I would not have guessed that. I did think you guys were a much larger operation than you just described.
Yeah, it's I would say we've been really blessed by a number of different people who have I would say given us not a leverage but a little bit of a springboard from everyone at Fort Darcy, Spirit of Systems, Dirty Civilian, just to name a couple right out of the gate. Chris Woomer at Vail Solutions, a lot of different folks like that have, I would say, given us a propelling hand forward, not only encouraging us, but using products and lending legitimacy in the early days to what we were doing and why we were doing it, and giving people, I would say, that little bit of confidence to step out on their own and then start using the products and saying, oh, wow, oh, okay, like there's thought behind this product and we're doing this for a reason. Like what's the reason? What's the application for this product? And so that's, this has been an adventure, let me tell you that.
I think even for companies that consider themselves small businesses still, it definitely just adds a level of professionalism and confidence from the consumer when you can look at a company or their social media pages or whatever it is and go, I bet that's a really big company with a lot of working parts. And then to hear an owner go, no, actually we're family owned, we're really small, so on and so forth. I think that gives consumers confidence to the professionalism side. I mean, ECT is the same way. I do most of the administrative stuff. I have a few assistant instructors, but it's not like it's a big shop by any means.
Yeah, and I think there's also a shift happening and it's generating trust with our customers as well, because there's shared common ground. And I'm sure you've experienced this, especially being out and working with instructors and working with, I would say, customers, and then can we call them clients?
Yeah.
When you have people who are continuing to come back and seek you out for things that establishes common ground. And when people go, hey, well, like, what are you doing for this? And I'm saying, hey, like, I've got a whole house water filter set up. Like, what's your primary water plan? Like, man, I've got small kids. I can't put a backpack on them, that's X amount of their body weight, or,
Mm-hmm.
X1 of their body weight, and be like, hey, bud, I know this is going to be really tough, but we're going to walk 14 miles today. Like, that's not an option.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm establishing common ground here, and people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have a whole house system set up that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work off a pump, that doesn't work off electricity, with an RO system that, at my point of use. And so it's all passive and it's all pressure driven.
Mm-hmm.
And when people hear that, oh, like that's what you're doing, yeah, like that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is an option. Like, that generates, I would say, not only legitimacy but confidence, and also an ease of mind. And talking to people like, hey, we're just people
Mm-hmm.
too. Where we happen to be doing this thing, but we're also a mom and pop shop. We're not one of these larger institutions. And there's nothing bad with a larger institution, but that also there are a lot of people out there who are like, hey, I want to support these small companies who
Mm-hmm.
are up and coming, and who, we're trying to, I don't want to say that there's an American dream that I reference, and there's the American nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to break out of the American nightmare and be able to have the time and opportunity to spend time and opportunities doing things with our family, with our kids, and having more freedom instead of being tied to a 9 to 5 in one location throughout, the entirety of your adult professional life.
Mm-hmm. I think it definitely is also really helpful for the small companies because I feel like it opens business owners, entrepreneurs, so on and so forth, up to tackling a lot more niche specific categories of stuff that we really never saw kind of pre COVID in the tactical or preparedness industry in a sense, whether it be, like water with you guys, auto rifles with like red right hand, ECT with, it's, radios and whatnot. Like there wasn't a lot of small companies tackling all of these more minor niche areas that are extremely important, but it was just too small of a, an area of focus or even a customer base at one point in time for these companies that essentially were just big gun and nylon companies.
Well, yeah, so there, like that differentiation, like from a scientific perspective, hey, we're going to drill down to a level, and we're just going to do, like you said, radios or auto rifles or water or food, like drilling down into those levels. Yeah, I'm thankful for the connectivity that has allowed for the specialization, and diversity in that. And the cool thing is, like, all of those different things can be appealing to not just someone only in the tactical realm, or only in the preparedness realm, or only in whatever label you want to put on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it can cross pollinate across a multitude of these different places. And I'm hoping that in people hearing me say that we're a small shop, or you saying that you're a small shop, like, that should be in encouragement to other people. If you have an idea, you can do it. You
Mm-hmm.
can start a business. And I think a lot of people are uh, intimidated by the process as it's laid out. Like, oh man, it's really hard to start a business. Oh, it's all, it's a lot of hard work, or it requires X amount of money. And
Mm-hmm.
the answer is, man, that work isn't always as it. I mean, it could be strenuous and it can be long hours.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, we're living that. But when you care about the work and you're passionate about it, and you're able to start making some of these uh, meet needs and see satisfied customers and see people's lives changed as a result, like, wow, like that right there is the real fuel to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. No, I 100% agree. For the guys, I mean, obviously, Cana Provisions is they're the name in water and water preparedness and water kind of operations at this point in time, or at least in theory and driving that realm of education. But where does that come from, and why did you decide this was the niche, this was the topic of conversation that you guys were going to settle on as what your business idea was formed around?
So there's a couple of different pieces, and I'll give you the guys the cool Genesis story, and then I'll give you kind of the more emotional portion of it as well, which I think is important, because I think we're made up of a multitude of different pieces that all feed into us: body, soul, spirit, mind, will, and emotions. And when we ignore chunks of that, that's when we end up with problems. So I want to come back to that emotional piece that kind of helped. I would say not push it through the crucible, but really push us over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2008, at the last minute, so I was still in college, and I had a bunch of guys all from my engineering class. They're like, "Hey man, we're gonna go do this thing in Africa," and I'm like, "Okay." What's this thing? They're like, yeah, we're going to do this thing with Engineers Without Borders, and we're going to go over here and we're going to build a dam, and we're going to do water distribution down into these different areas. And we've got this whole contingent of nurses that are coming with us, and they're going to take care of like the nursing stuff and education, and it's going to be a gas. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not doing anything else after semester ends, so yeah, I'm in. So I spent a month in Africa. In Cameroon, a little village called Nkuf in the middle of the rainforest, like think the equator and prime meridian, like right off of that elbow in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought everything in, and then we lived right there with the locals. I mean, it was a considerable hike in, and we had to do all of our own water and all of our own food, and it was eye-opening to really see how people live in those areas of the world, and what a huge difference something like clean water can make, not only in general adult health, but the health of children whose immune systems obviously need a little more, I would say not protection, but stress on kids and on pregnant women and on the elderly, like major issues. And then even to something as simple as infant mortality in childbirth, and not having clean water there can lead to infections and a very high rate, unfortunately, of mothers who pass away, and kids as a result. So I witnessed all of those things firsthand, and it kind of went dormant for a very long time. I was involved in kind of this industry. I used to work for Trigicon. I started another small business, and I had been involved in the periphery for a long time. Well, I had met Rich Mason in 2013 from Darcy, Direct Action Resource Center. And in 2020, right before COVID went nuclear, at SHOT, we bumped back into each other, and he was just like, hey, you really need to come out and experience Darcy. And, I'd been supporting him with products in the past up until that time, but it really kind of set things off when we got on the phone, and he said, well, you really need to come and experience this class we do called Tactical Urban Sustainment Course, TUSC. I was like, okay, like I've done FTXs before, like this, a final training exercise. I've done things like this before. I'll be all right. And I had my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, another very close friend of mine come with me. And we're like, all right, this is what we're going to do for water. And I was just like, dude, I've done this in Africa for real. This is not a big deal. Like, we've done backpacking stuff. Like, we're going to be fine. Well, within 30 hours of arriving, we had of the entire class of, 25 filters. I think we had 2 functional. And it was 100 and something degrees in Arkansas. And, we have heat casualties. And I'm looking at this like, this is a major problem. Like, this is a major, major problem. This is all pre-Cana getting kicked off. So I finish out of that exercise and suffering and learning. And I immediately came back and started working through some changes as far as water plan stuff that I wanted to implement for my family. Mm-hmm. So I started bringing some of those lessons to the forefront. Like, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And I started coordinating with Rich and going back out, not even to participate in the whole class, but to test out. Like, hey, this is an alumni day, and I'm just going to work on water X, Y, and Z. And then I came back to another one. And I was just like, hey, I just need to work on water 1, 2, 3. And I kept doing that and doing that and doing that until we had the AR1 and the decon kit. Like, those concepts were very flushed out, and they were very ready to go. And this was right about 2021. And so at that point, my third son was born, and he was rushed to the NICU. And when that happened, I remember standing there thinking about all the hours that I was putting into my day job. and really like coming to the realization with, my child here in front of me, like, we don't know if he's going to make it. We don't know what's going on. Like, we're completely in the dark. My day job is never going to love me back, like, ever. Once I'm gone, they're just going to replace me.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at my child going, well, what is it? If I lose him, what's worth anything anymore? And I look at my other kids. I'm like, man, I'm spending all of this time doing all of this other work. Like, what if I could figure out a way to not be away from the home? What if I could figure out a way to be at home and be involved in their education and be involved in the life skills in raising them up to really become men after God's own heart? Like, how do I do that? And we're sitting here looking at the possibility of turning Cana over. And so I really credit Rich at Darcy and Adam at Spiritus. They were both, I would say, continuing to needle me, to not antagonize me, but give me these nudges like, Zach, you really need to get back into this. You really need to do this. And so at that point in December 2021, my son came out of the NICU, and we were like, praise God, first and foremost. All right, what are we going to do different? And that's when we filed our articles of incorporation, and we really started pushing things forward. Now, note, that was December of 2021. It took us all the way to March of 23 to have the AR1 ready to go, to have all of the decon kit not only conceptualized, but all of the marketing, the packaging, like everything done and ready to really kick things off. And so that was March of 23, leading into May of 23 was the decon kit. And then from there, we've just been, I would say, working at a fever pitch, trying to keep up not only with demand, but also as things continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Sorry,
wow.
That was a little bit of a long story.
Yeah, that was a great story, though. I definitely did not. I mean, I'm sure most people don't. I didn't know there was that much of a backstory essentially from Cana Provisions, especially going all the way back to Africa. So that's that's awesome. I mean, that's definitely a place of inspiration on why water is so important.
Yeah, and that was, from graduating and from 08 to oh my man, all the way to 20. So like 12 years, like water wasn't on my mind. You turn the tap on. Sure. That's where water comes from. Like, yeah, I know conceptually about water filtration, and I know conceptually about municipal plants, and I know conceptually about all these things, but yeah, it's always been a resource. That's that normalcy bias of where do these things come from? Oh, and David Grossman, Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman, On Killing and On Combat. His books talk about that very specifically. People in our generation, like, where does meat come from? The grocery store. Mm-hmm. Not even the butcher anymore, right? The grocery store, or it's mail ordered. Like, people don't connect the whole life, living, raising an animal to slaughter, butcher, then consume. Like, there's a whole connection in that process. And I don't know, sometime right in that 2021 realm is when I connected all of those, all that synovio, the connective tissue for water, to put it all together. And it was actually my wife, Mel, and I were sitting there talking. We're like, what do we name this thing? And I'm sketching up the gear drop, right? I'm sitting there on our family schedule, our calendar, and I'm sketching, just like, man, I need a catchy logo, something that's really going to resonate with people. And she's giving me input, and we're going through this, and we're like, okay, how do we name this? How do we, what's the genesis of where this is coming from? We talked about all of this, and she's just like, well, like, let's take it back. You just used the word Genesis. Let's take it back. Like, okay, well, not in Genesis, but Cana. And then people will email me, and they're like, hey man, like, do you know there's the story in the Bible, Jesus' first public miracle at a wedding at Cana? And I'm smiling over here. I'm like, yes, that's actually exactly where the name came from. And so, not only we family owned, but we're faith based. Like, we're not ashamed of our faith, and we're not private about our faith. You know, it's not something that we want to push on everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone wants to ask us where our hope comes from, where our joy comes from, where these things in our lives, the good fruit in our lives come from, we want to be able to point back openly and say it's because of the presence of Jesus Christ in our marriage, in our home, in our day-to-day lives. And so that's very much another message with Cana, is that, like, if you want living water, then there's only one source to go to, and it's definitely not Cana Provisions. It's not us. It's Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the genesis of the name as well.
Well, that's awesome. That's also a very unique place for, obviously the name to come from. I
Yeah.
remember, I mean, because you said Cana came around in 2021, 2022, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think if I look back, the third or fourth YouTube video that I ever posted for ECT after I got out of the Marine Corps was about water preparedness. It was posted in December of 2021. It still only has barely 800 views. And even looking back from then, everything I covered in that video about like backpack filters, gravity filters, tablets, water cans, like even my own water preparedness plan and all of the items I have for it has in an insane way just is completely different from what I talked about in 2021. And it was shortly right after that is when I think you guys really made the big emergement with the ARC packs, and everyone was like, "Whoa, we've never seen anything like this at all." Pumping water. We're taking water pumps to the field. We're going to fill jerry cans. Like most people had always just thought, like, oh, I just go to the river and I stick the water can in the water, and then whatever comes out is what comes out. But you guys were the first ones to really dive into not only that manner of it, but also kind of the tactical, the safety, the security approach of water operations that, in an unfortunate environment, that it is not a safe thing to do.
Right. And so there's another story. I'm on in story mode apparently now.
Hey, we got all
There's
day.
another story of where of where that came from. And to be clear, I'm not a water treatment operator. I don't have a. I am not a public municipality certified water treatment operator or anyone to that effect. I'm an engineer by training, and so like the big deal that I had. Not the big deal, but the selling point of all of our WDC, which is water data cards, water data, either on Nalgene's, on the cards, some of the new products we're going to be bringing out on our settling buckets, like all of that information, the water plan worksheets for that matter, which are free on the website, like go download those. I don't know if you've downloaded or looked at those, but those have a lot of tools in them. What I'm seeking to do is take something that is by and large very complex to people and break it down into digestible, understandable, and then actionable items. And I think that's a big piece of why it resonates with people as they see it and they go, oh, okay, I can do this. And the answer is yes, you can do this. The exact same thing I said at the beginning about a business. Yes, you can. You can do a business. So the genesis of the water security portion, I credit this, again, largely to Rich setting up Tusk, just how much that course has changed. And you really talk to him about how much the course has changed throughout its pipeline, its history. But then with golly, Adam, and that first class we went through together. And so he had a whole contingent of guys with him from Spiritus. And they were, I remember being quite intimidated as we're going out to secure water and pick up water at night. I have one guy with me who is fresh out of third bat. And in our squad of 10 guys, we had one PVS 14. And it was my personal PVS 14. And I was working to collect water. So I handed my personal unit off to this guy fresh out of third bat. I'm like, hey man, will you run perimeter security while we're handling this? And so he comes and he finds me and he's just like, we got to get out of here right now. And I'm like, why? And he hands it over and we start looking around and it's Adam and his whole Spiritus team is closing in on us quite literally like predators on the African plains. Like I can see all of their binocular night vision, like very clearly as they're in a great tactical position, pressing the advantage, closing in on us, and we're about to get swept right into a kill sack. And I remember being, I don't say panicky, but there was definitely anxiety. So we're doing this again all at night. I'm in the water in Arkansas with poisonous snakes like around. My position's being pushed, and obviously this is not live fire. It's not an enemy actually coming to take lives, but I like there's a certain level of anxiety and stress that's elevated in that position.
Oh, absolutely.
And after that, like I can still tell that story, smell the smells, smell the smells, hear the hears, hear the sounds, remember vividly what that experience did to me, because I was like, if I'm having to do this for my family, I don't have a 10-man squad to push out and collect water. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. And so that's the genesis of the AR1 was, how do I move water quickly and quietly, adhering to Lion T, from the vulnerability perspective.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear you talk about just the raw emotions and everything that you felt, even in that training environment. I tell guys all the time, if you are not anxious, if you are not happy about your success, pissed about your failures and all of that in your training and in your training cycles and your final assessments and all of that kind of stuff, if that emotion isn't there, you're either A, not taking your training seriously enough, or your training is not to a high enough caliber. Because the first time you feel those emotions, that anxiety, that rush, should not be when it matters most. With the first time you ever experience it when it does matter most, it'll obviously be higher. But you should have a level of mental and physical exposure to those mimicked feelings long before it really is going to count. I mean, even like just from my personal experience, I'll put the Marine Corps side, the fire service. That's why they put fire recruits through burn buildings in the fire academy. And yeah, they're just burning old couches and wooden pallets and stuff like that. And the building's not actually flammable because it's probably all concrete. But you still have that rush, you have that emotion, you have that heat, you have a little bit of smoke, and you can really kind of feel it for the first time. And it's important for that exposure. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, and so from a scuba diving and an SCBA perspective, I'm certified to run SCBA and other stuff at work as well. And then running and doing stuff in gas masks. I love what you just said there. The first time someone's exposed to that, they feel the heat or they feel the cold, and you can hear your own respiration rate in your mask going like, whoa. Hold on, man. I really need to get control of my breathing, because right now I'm not making well-informed decisions. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start working that respiratory pause. I'm going to go in for my 3 count, hold for my 3 count, exhale for my 3 count. I need to get back in control of myself. So I love that what you just brought up. Like, that shouldn't be the first time that you're seeing and feeling these things. My wife played college soccer, and we joke because she said, we'd be constantly be playing these practice games, and in run up to the season, we're actually going out and we're playing games or we're scrimmaging, but they just don't count against our actual season record. So I challenge guys to go out, and no matter how much flat range stuff you're doing, go get some sort of simunition force on force training. And it's really interesting to see, like, if you guys are really practiced and they're really on their manipulations, and I don't care how fast their splits are, there's a certain level of stress there when someone else is actually trying to hurt you, that it changes how we process information. And the people who are really trained up, and the people who are doing a lot of practice and a lot of dry fire and getting a lot of rounds in, like, they're obviously going to do far, far better, because I'm going to use the phrase muscle memory. I know there's some bad science behind that, but we're going to default to what you've been doing over and over and over again. So I joke of that with my wife. I'm like, look, if a gunfight is the real deal, if that's the game, then getting force on force training that's the simunition. That's the simulated event. That's the scrimmage event. And so that's when I go to do stuff. That's when I'm just going to a scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. But feeling all of those emotions rise, feeling the stress, the anxiety, elevated heart rate, like the whole cortisol response, I think that's extremely important.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you bring up that muscle memory is somewhat what would be the word, popular or unpopular per se amongst people. Some people say muscle memory is absolutely a thing. Some people say there's no science that proves that, so on and so forth. I'm definitely team muscle memory. I mean, between now 10 years of jiu-jitsu, 10 years of shooting, Marine Corps, fire service, all of that involved, I definitely think there is a, weirdly enough, as nature works, a programmed muscular response, or really maybe even more nervous system response to
That's it.
certain events that take place. You're in jiu-jitsu, you're grappling with somebody, you got somebody in guard, and they put their hand here. Your brain, if you've been doing it long enough, your brain goes, well, this is what we do next, and you just do it without thinking. When you're drawing from your pistol holster, your drop holster, and I've had guys say it to me in the past. I definitely don't shoot as much now as I used to, especially pre-COVID, just with time available, range access since I've been out of the Marine Corps, ammunition prices. But you will see the same exact draw motion from me, whether I haven't shot in 2 months or in 6 months. I think there's definitely a muscle memory to it. I think it's hard to deny that.
There's no denying it. If anything, I'm challenging the name of muscle memory. What is it ascribed to? What you just said is a neurological response. And so there's another, I'm saying teaching, I don't even know where it comes from, NLP, neural linguistic programming, that we can elicit very specific responses from our bodies based on our sympathetic nervous system response. And there are muscle movements that can be tied to that. And so I'm not adequately equipped professionally or scientifically to make a ruling on that by any means. But there is, like you said, under stress. That's why, the military has done things with drills for as long as they have. It doesn't matter what it is, as far as, hey, when you get a certain stimulus or a certain response, even under stress, this is what you are supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a very strong body of evidence to say, it doesn't, you've done 10,000 draw strokes. Your draw stroke is by and large going to be, plus or minus 5% what you always practice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. That I wasn't trying to purport anything other than that.
Sure. Yeah. No. I think I looked into this at one point in time because someone had said, well, it's technically not muscle memory. I believe it's referred to as muscle memory because while it's openly accepted that it's more of a neurological response than a muscle response, you're specifically utilizing the neuroreceptors in your muscles. And that's where the term muscle memory comes from, more so because the neuroreceptors run your muscles, aka muscle memory. Semantics, really.
Yeah. Well, all that goes back to say, when you have that training in place and you are presented with a stressful situation, you're going to default back to that, even if it's not as fast or there is some degradation. Mm-hmm. Like, getting exposed to those things ahead of time matters. So I don't think there's any difference of doing that from a water perspective. And it's one of the reasons I joke with people of like, hey, do water standing up, do water sitting down, do water in the day, do water in the dark, do it with one hand, do it, with the other hand. Start working your way through things that to be normal, so that when you are presented with an excess amount of stress, you're able to do the minute task with not only a lot of confidence, but with excellence. And that's, again, one of the reasons that the whole WDC line of products exists, because, I might be dosing a different volume of water, or I might be using a different treatment method. Mm-hmm. And there's 1,001 different things to remember. There's way more than 1,000, but 99% of people are tasked with all of these other things going on. Now, I've written a lot of this dosage information down over and over and over again. I've done the calculations over and over and over again. And some of them I can remember, but admittedly, like if you're going to throw at me like, hey, this is a 4.2 gallon container, what's your dose rate going to be? I mean, man, I got cards for this. Like
Sure.
I have these resources here to help me as reference material, so I'm not having to fly by the seat of my pants. Even if I can estimate, estimation is not always the best tool.
Yeah, having reference material is huge, and that goes for everything. Water, comms, whatever it might be. I mean, that's the biggest thing I tell people is print stuff out, laminate it, put it in a binder. Do whatever you need to. Have material on hand that you can physically hold in your hand and look at with your own eyes.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
Obviously, water is a massive logistical task, regardless of whatever you're talking about, whether you're talking about your family's water, you're talking about your mutual assistance group's water, you're talking about your response organization's water, whatever it might be, professional, volunteer, whatever it is. It's a huge logistical task. So to kind of probably put this into better context, did you have much experience talking with guys or even directly or anything as far as water operations go with any of like the Hurricane Helene stuff and the fallout that came from that? What are some lessons learned? What are some things that people really pointed out?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's thousands of lessons learned. Man, I think one of the things that sticks out to me more than anything is getting reports from people on the ground of fights breaking out over clean water. Not over the materials, not over the tools, but actually over water. And I remember talking with Rich on the phone about this, and he said, "Yeah, shocking, right? Like we talk about it, and we've seen it happen in Venezuela. We've seen it happen in South Africa. I'm sure it's happened in Ukraine. I don't have any direct stories of it, but I'm sure. Like, look at any war torn or third world nation. Like, yeah, these conflicts end up happening, and so people recognizing that that's happening here in the U.S., like 600 miles away from them or closer. I think that's a huge a mind bomb to go off. But it's really easy in our contemporary culture of bread and circuses. Keep the people fed, keep the people entertained. The news media switches from X to X to X to Y. Like, what about the people like all over Appalachia who had no power going into the winter, who had massive propane and fuel heating fuel shortages? Like, all of a sudden that the care dried up, and it was terrifying to see. And on another level, from an EMP or a CME level, I think that should be scary to people as well. Like, great. So when we had Helene happen, you had people coming literally from all over the country, probably some from Europe, South America. Like, I'm sure I'd be shocked of where people all came from, but you had people descending all to render aid. When Hurricane Katrina, the exact same thing happened. September 11th, like, you had people from all over the country, like, just descending to help. Well, what happens when that other help isn't available? To me, like, that's the lesson that I end up internalizing. Like, wow, like, what if there isn't anyone else in this region, or this region's affected, but the other region's also affected? So seeing little things like that happen. And then, as we talked about the water plan worksheets, which I referenced already, from a planning perspective of, okay, if that was me here at my home with my family, what tools do I have in place? And like, okay, so we're running Cana Provisions. We have a lot of different tools and materials at our disposal. But what if I'm not here and a boil warning goes out? Like, there's no announcement that, oh, hey, they discussed it. A boil warning is coming. Like, if they discovered it 2 hours late, what's that going to do for my baby girl? Like, she's already consumed the water. So what's it? Even if I call my wife, I'm like, hey, don't use the water. Well, what? We've been using the water for the past 2 hours. Now what? And so that to me has been, I think, the one of the messages and the lessons that I've learned and I've been trying to hand off to people is take the time now to get passive systems in place.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't have a reverse osmosis under sink or countertop system, like, dude, that costs way less than a brand new pistol of your choice
Mm-hmm.
or a case of ammo of your choice.
For sure.
Like, okay, it might be around a case of 9 mil right now. Like, you can get them for $200 to $300, and that's gonna, like, you can filter salt water with that. And so, there's a lot of different versions that you can get. I prefer the pressure driven ones for under sink so they don't require any electricity, but you've got these home environmental genesis units where it'll pull water out of the atmosphere. Dude, how cool is that tech? But, that's usually like 1 kilowatt of electricity per 1 gallon of water.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for those of you who don't know the electricity conversion, that's a lot of juice.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1,000 watts at any given point to, be pulling that out of the atmosphere. So I'm looking at that from the perspective of, okay, how do we educate and equip people to be ready for an event like that where at least water's taken care of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. In the beginning, you brought up people, obviously from the Helene stories, but even just other instances, people are fighting over clean water, even in a civilized society where all of the other services may still be up. I remember even from Virginia this past year, there was an entire county that had a boil water notice because the power went out during a snowstorm and the whole county lost water service for like 6 days. And there were videos coming out from the local supermarkets on like day one, day two of people just fighting and beating each other over a case of water at the local store. And they still had all of the other services. They still had power. They still could go to the gas station and get gas. The grocery store still had food, but they were just fighting over bottled water. Now, take that and again apply it to the Hurricane Helene situation. Take that and apply that to a war torn, community situation, anything like that. You've got big problems to account for outside of just water. You've got your own safety, your family safety. If you die going off to try and find water, what does that do for the rest of your family? Or you lose a fire team of guys from your local response organization. You lose a fire team of guys trying to do security on water operations. Those are 4 or 5 guys you're not getting back. So there's so much that goes into it, and people forget how complex some of this stuff can be in real life because it's hard to mimic now when everything is good.
Absolutely. And so you hit the nail on the head there. Like, what's the cost? What's the opportunity cost for me to do this? And while it looks super cool to get all kitted up and with all of your bros and with night vision and the plate carriers and the auto rifle and the DMR and guys on, side by sides and, hey, we've got a drone up and like, yeah, like, dude, you've got this sweet QRF, but try this on for size. I don't have to send anyone anywhere because I have it here. I have step off water here. So instead of pushing out something, which, don't get me wrong, is a great capability to have, and I'm all for that. But if I don't have to come home and tell my best friend's wife why my best friend didn't come home, or vice versa, why I didn't come home, and all of the equipment that's now lost that we can't get back, the people that we now can't get back, and what happens if that means that body of water is now spoiled forever? Okay, that's not my team. What happens if it's another team of individuals and they're not actually bad guys? What if they're doing the exact same thing that you guys are and there's no deconfliction of space or anything, and it goes to guns, and now you've got wounded on both sides and potentially someone dead in the water?
Absolutely. No,
Like,
I agree.
it boils, and it doesn't just boil, it just jumps out of control at a wild rate. Man, there's a little bit of a rabbit trail off topic here, but it's scary. It's scary to put all those things into context. And the answer is, man, if I don't have to push outside my security perimeter and push that bubble out, then I don't want to.
And this is a big point to drive home, the point of community. And that's not just your bros and all of the tactical gear your credit card will allow you to purchase. It is, the relations with the farmer next door. It's knowing Betty from the bank. It's all of the people in your immediate group knowing other people in the community, and through that an extension of community. So hopefully you don't have problems like that, or you have an
Right.
organization in place that is working to hopefully help the community as a whole, bring resources to it. And with like Hurricane Helene as an example, you talked about people from all over the world coming and descending on this area to provide aid, provide help. You know, Unfortunately, with a lot of that kind of stuff, something people forget is security, whether that be security while you're on the ground, actually providing help, or it's security at these distribution facilities, these supply facilities, whatever it might be, trying to distribute all of this. The people that are coming and are doing these bad acts of stealing water or fighting over food or doing stuff like that. There's some people that are bad people, but they're not all bad people. They're desperate. How do you know that, 35-year-old guy that snuck onto the little supply compound at 2 in the morning trying to steal stuff? How do you know he's a bad guy? Or, he's got starving kids at home. His grandma just died because she's got COPD and hasn't had oxygen for 6 days, and, so on and so forth. So they're not necessarily bad people, but you got to have the security in place as well, because if the groups providing aid and doing all of this, don't have some stability and some structure and some consistency along with them, then the community gets nothing in return. And you talked earlier about what happens when the help doesn't come. That's a big thing I drive home, like with my community response content and all of the groups and organizations I talk with, was as community defense groups, Minuteman groups, all of that kind of stuff. Your job is not necessarily to step up when everything is fine and a minor area is affected, most of the time. Your job is when everybody is affected and there is no help coming. What do you do now? Who is there to help? If you're expecting guys to come from counties 2 hours away because your county was messed up, you're in for a bad day when every county within a 2 or 3 hour radius of you is messed up.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And so there's that. I don't know who to attribute the saying to. Basically, no help is coming. Like we're all we have. Like that's it. Prepare to self-rescue.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a amalgamation to go with. Character, definition of character is what you do when no one else is looking. Like, okay, so who are we as individuals within our community when nothing is going on, when there's no crisis, when there's none of this other stuff? Like, who are you with your kids when you're tired and they're sick and they've had a rough day and you've had a rough day? Like, are we exploding at our spouses, at our kids, or our coworkers for that matter? When we have an issue with our coworkers, are we backbiting and gossiping, or are we going to them and saying, like, look, we've had an issue, like let's sit down and talk about this? Like, those are character building moments and defining moments that are only going to be exacerbated by heaping stress on top of things. And that's where you get people in these positions where you start hearing people say, and this is a quote for everyone, like, oh, I'll just be looking for the next loot drop. Like, you challenge my kids, you put my kids in danger. Like, I'll do anything. Like, I'm just going to become a warlord. Like, well, dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but there already are these giant hierarchies of, we'll call them not warlords, but the gangs that operate all over the US and all these different areas, who understand use of force, who understand organization, who understand community. Like, you got a whole nother problem coming if you're not looking at some of those things already.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the saying that I'll give back to, it comes from Rich at Darcy, is community's queen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, when you're trying to produce all of this water, and you're like, hey man, yeah, come on, bro, bring all your stuff and your guns and your ammo over here. Well, did you bring water? No, I didn't bring any water. Did you bring food? No. Did you bring your comms? No, but oh, dude, check out these NVGs. Like, okay, cool. I'm really glad you have the NVGs. That's super. That's actually a force multiplier, but your job's going to be security now over here. And we really need to find water.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you bring, 4 other people with the exact same thing, and no one's thought about food, like, come on, guys, I need someone else to start thinking about food. Like, someone needs to start thinking about the water part of here, because, and then going back to your security, example, that's what it's very likely going to end up doing a lot in these disaster situations is pulling security, very boringly, I might add, and taking care of your own poop.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing Instagram worthy about those two things, but you know what is? Not dying.
Mm-hmm. And that drives back home the point again of logistics is such a wide category of importance that most people have no experience with at all. At least not in this topic of conversation. I'm not talking about logistics at your, contracting company of XYZ products and all that. I'm talking logistics about food, water, sleep schedules, resupply, vehicle maintenance, like the whole thing. Most people just don't have any experience with that. And it's not their fault. But, people have got to be able to recognize that that is the important stuff. You're right. Guys showing up with MVGs and cool guy ARs, that's awesome. That does do something. But what does more is good logistics and a good supply plan to begin with that can then make all of the other stuff a lot easier of a task. You know,
Right, right.
how
So,
long are guys going to stay in security if they haven't eaten in 3 days and they're all in bed rest, dehydrated?
right,
Not that
like
long.
pooping their
Or
brains out.
pooping their brains
So
out.
I want to be really clear. I'm not throwing stones at anyone. Like
Oh,
I've
no, yeah,
I've
right.
got things that I'm working on in my life personally, emotionally, mentally. I've got things that I'm working on from a preparedness perspective, with our family preparedness perspective, working on with community. So I want to be really clear that I am not demonizing anyone or talking down at anyone. These are platitudes about examples that I'm rolling into a much larger uh, mural that I'm trying to paint. And so we had talked about this briefly. Remind me of the name of the group that had that water buffalo, the homemade water buffalo.
The River Valley Minutemen, the
Yes.
RVM.
So that concept that I saw pop up, someone sent me that on my feed and Instagram, like your example of what you said, like, hey man, I'm really glad you showed up with your 4 ARs. We really need water though.
Mm-hmm.
I'd much rather someone show up with no guns, no ammo, like the clothes on their back. They're like, hey man, here's the deal. Like, I had my truck, I couldn't get anything else, but I hooked up to this water buffalo, and man, this is all I got. Like, well, praise God.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I
absolutely.
would. Like, we'll find another rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll get some more ammo. But the water, this is going to give me the time and opportunity that other people don't have to make sound decisions. Because when other people are panicking, I can keep a clear head. And so that's the concept of step off water that we talk about in the water plan worksheets that came out of Darcy. That is, I want to have known, good, treated water that's clean on hand. So when the boil warning comes or people are knocking each other's teeth out over the last case of water at Costco, guess what? I don't have to be there
Mm-hmm.
because I've already got that planned out. So I want to actually quote the Dirty Civilian guys who brought this back up to me, which was General Omar Bradley said this during World War II. He said, "Amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics." And getting all of these things organized and the task org behind getting those things in place of understanding the organization and then delegating the responsibility and turning it into action items. Exactly same thing I was talking about with the water data cards. Like, hey, I need to take a complex thing, make it digestible, make it intelligible, and then make it actionable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Ah,
That's a great quote as well. That one definitely sticks with me, and I know a lot of other people because logistics wins it all at the end of the day. Whatever the goal or the game is at the end of the day, like logistics really does it. And I want to expand on that whole water buffalo thing for a second because a lot of people will think, and I don't want people to take us out of context. We're not saying that everybody needs to bring a water buffalo per se to the big shindig, whatever the big shindig is. I mean, 20 water buffaloes sounds great, but that is probably overkill. You kind of, in my opinion, it needs to be looked at as like a tier system. Starting down at the individual levels, every individual brings, one 5-gallon jerry can of clean water. Well, now 20 individuals show up. That's a part of some sort of local organization. Now you've got 20 jerry cans of clean water, but the organization did its administrative and logistical work ahead of time And a designated individual also brought a water buffalo with some sort of IBC tote, which is like 275 gallons, or maybe a military surplus one that was purchased, a couple hundred gallons of water. So now not only do we have distributable individual water, hey, you guys are going out on a run in the vehicles, here, take a 5-gallon jerry can or take 2 5-gallon jerry cans from supply. But now back at wherever the command and control aspect of all of this is, you have that excess amount of water that you refilled the jerry cans from, and there's a whole much bigger logistical plan that goes behind that. I mean, I'm sure you've done the math as well. On a general basis, what does the preparedness community always say? 3 to 5 gallons of water for every military age male per day in an ideal environment. Now, you can go much less, of
Yep.
course, but in an ideal environment between cooking, cleaning, drinking. If you're going to have a bunch of military age males, running around for 12 hours a day doing various stuff, holding security, going on runs, building stuff, whatever it is, they're going to need water. You need water to cook food, especially if you're eating a lot of preparedness style food, freeze dried meals, stuff like that. You need water. You got to be able to do hygiene. You got to be able to clean. You got to do all this type of stuff. Can you go, several days using only 1 gallon of water between drinking and hygiene kind of? Sure. But when we're looking at, we'll use the term troop management, long periods of time, we want, personnel, individuals, family members even, that are well hygiened as long as they can be. We want things to be clean. We want guys to be well hydrated because they can be. We should look to exceed. We should look to go at a higher level, not necessarily, have everybody suffer at the minimum. So those long-term planning
Absolutely.
logistics are huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And so look at the perfect case study of this is caloric intake. And you look at caloric intake and you're like, oh yeah, so and so's eating 1,000 calories a day. And at that point, you actually, depending on some other individuals' height, weight, metabolic rate, everything, you can enter into your body begins consuming itself. It's in starvation mode already. Oh, well, I'm still getting 1,000 calories. Well, 1,000 calories isn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing with the water. Like, okay, well, according to all the different statistics, hey, like as males, as adult military age males, we should be drinking probably close to a gallon of water a day. Dude, I'm the water guy, and I struggle to do that. I would imagine the broad body of males do not drink nearly enough water. Like the preparedness food thing you just brought up, like I feel like I wish I had a pallet. I need a picture. I need a picture of a pallet of emergency food and be like, hey, what's your water plan to go with this? Because a pallet of emergency food, to talk about a dream, I'd love to have that just set off.
Mm-hmm.
But I need the water to go with it. So I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people, estimate that 3 to 5 gallons of water a day. We just say 5, and people look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, like this is so much water. This is so over the top. I'm like, so hold on. If you're planning for it to be bad and you end up with too much water, like that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't use that as a trading commodity. You can't use that as leverage for something. And like you hit on another very, very important point, which is hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a huge deal, especially doing all of these different things, all these different tasks, running chainsaws or being out on foot and getting blisters and crossing dirty bodies of water, ponds, streams, rivers, creeks, whatever they are, working out in the dirt, doing things you don't necessarily always do, lends itself to very easy new avenues of infection,
Mm-hmm.
of new avenues of injury. And then we're not even touching the potential medical needs that water medical needs. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a clinic set up, like, okay, like we're not even talking about sterile IV fluids. We're not talking about the water necessary to boil bandages or bed sheets or disinfect surfaces. Like we're going to blow up that water usage table like major.
Mm-hmm. And I'll even throw this at you because you talked about trading. Let's not even think about trading for a second. Let's just talk about supporting our own infrastructure. Behind me right now, about 35 yards outside, is 25 chickens. Down the hill is a horse. I know people with goats, with cows, so on and so forth. So let's even say whether it's a mutual assistance group, you, some friends and family, or it's like an actual response organization, you think about what do certain members have that could support an organization that needs things in time of crisis, in time of operations, when something big happens. a couple guys having chickens, maybe 60 chickens total in the group. Chickens give you eggs, but chickens need to drink water every day. You know,
Oh yeah.
goats or cows that might give you milk, those need to drink water every day. Horses that
Yep.
might, carry stuff, allow you to traverse different terrain, they need water. So then that's a whole other aspect of the water plane that you got to think about. Because if you have enough water for you, your wife, and maybe two kids in your house, great, fantastic. What about all of your animals if you have animals?
So you would not believe the number of messages I got from people about like, hey man, like on your water plan, I don't have enough for my dog. Like what would you suggest? And dude, I grew up with I not grew up, but as a teen, I had a dog. Like had a dog as an adult, had a cat. Like I love animals. I think animals can be a really amazing emotion, like for emotional recovery and support. Like we don't have any at the moment, but dude, it didn't even register with me. And as I start thinking about how important people's animals are to them,
Mm.
not only from an emotional support capacity, relief, comfort, any of those things, but then the work that you just talked about, I went back, I looked up the Journal of Veterinary Medicine and did the research and found out, okay, this is kind of what we need for a dog. Like I revved the whole water plan worksheet at the beginning to include household pets because I know that's such a big deal to people.
Mm-hmm.
And that just going back to the very beginning of our conversation, like I want that to also be my little explanation there is like, hey, we're people too, and we're trying to look out for people's needs, even if it's a creature comfort. Like, hey, I want to have my miniature schnauzer with me. Like, why'd you choose a miniature schnauzer, dude? Like, okay, whatever. Like, yeah, you and your cat are going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just get a little extra water. This is how much extra water you need.
Yeah, I mean, man, the logistics of everything is when you really sit down, regardless of what your end goal is, what the purpose of it all is, even just a family with some farm animals, like the logistics behind true preparedness it's a task. And people have
Yeah.
survived thousands of years with less planning, less stuff. But, those were different times. Those were a different breed of humans. They knew
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
The land was better. I mean, you and your subdivision with 700 people next to another subdivision with another 700 people in a city of 10,000 people. That's a that's a different ball game. That's
That's
a
a nightmare,
that
is what that
that
is.
sounds horrible. That's why I live in the woods.
So I wanted to go back to one of your statements that you made,
Mhm.
which was starting on the individual level, and we're talking on a lot of platitudes here, and I want to make some of this like actual breakdown and like put it again on an actionable level for people,
Mhm.
and that I think you hit the nail right on the head. Focus on the individual because if an individual is going to show up with 2 quarts of water on their person that's clean and immediately usable, and a 5.3 gallon, which is 20 liters. It's a common jerry can of clean water, and a couple of extra little things. They're going to be set
Mhm.
for a while.
Mhm.
And that I think the emphasis needs to be on that. And I'm glad to see actually the trend in the community coming back around to like LBE gear, not a whole ruck. Yeah, a ruck is good and a ruck has its place, but sometimes just carrying things on your LBE is the way to do it. Because if I can carry 2 quarts of water, I can carry a decon kit and a water purification tablet kit. And, maybe I'll just skip the rehydration kit for the moment and I'll throw in a minor incident repair kit, a minor incident field kit from Austere. So I've got some of my boo boo stuff taken care of. If people show up with that on their kit instead of another XYZ, then you have a sustainment portion that you, as the organizational head, don't have to shoulder that burden. And I think that's a huge differentiating point is to be able to offload some of that responsibility onto the individual. And in doing so, you actually have a force multiplying option. So the way that you laid out, and you obviously with your background, you can tell that you've thought through some of these things logistically. Like if all 20 guys are showing up with that stuff, and then you have one guy who's the water guy who shows up with the water buffalo or shows up with two 55-gallon drums full of water, like, whoa, okay, like now we're not talking about sustainment. Now our force posture and our presence, we can push that out further because we're not worried about individual things. So I just want to kick that back over to the individual and be like, what are you doing, regardless of if it is one person you're responsible for, like I am an army of one, versus is this for me and my girlfriend, me and my wife and my, my one little kid, or in my case, me and my family of six.
Mm-hmm.
I'm responsible for, like, the logistical burden that I should have to bear for those people is going to be larger than
Absolutely.
it is going to be for an individual showing up.
Yeah. I've talked, I mean, that's been a big, like, kind of core principle of the Minuteman theory that I've been pushing since 2021 with all the ECT content is if you as an individual cannot help your family, then you cannot help the Minutemen. And if you can't help the Minutemen, then you can't help the community. It all goes back to the individual level: individual, family, group, community. If any of those
Yep.
pillars are removed somewhere in there, the whole house falls down.
Yep. And that's where the scale of working it up, that's, love him or hate him, Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, like, is working in the exact same way. Hey, I'm going to take something, eat that elephant one bite at a time. I'm going to take something that's a small, easily grasped and actioned item, and I'm going to take that. Okay, so for some people that's a decon kit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like, if you great, you can make your own decon kit, or your own boo boo kit. Do you have those things set up? If right now, if you don't have those things set up, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's your call to action right there. And if you want one that's a little more robust and it's sealed, and our name and Austere's name stand behind it, and you want to be able to leave it somewhere for a long period of time, then we've got decon kits, and we've got the field kit line from Austere, and we're happy to provide those to people. But the point here isn't even just to say, hey, come buy our stuff. The point is to pick something and take action on it from the water plan perspective. We don't sell reverse osmosis systems for under your sink or a whole house filter, nor do we sell 55-gallon drums or even jerry cans at this point. Like, my call to action for people is to go do something. So love or hate our content, you can still do something for you, for your family, for your group, for your community.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Just in general, and just inspire others to do more.
And do something. Just do something. And man, I don't know if this comes from recovery, steps to recovery or something, but it's one small step. As insignificant as it seems, it's helping you build momentum. So take that one small step. Guys will look at the AR1, for example, and they'll be like, man, like, that's really expensive and all this other stuff. Like, or they'll call and be like, hey, I'm really looking at getting this. And they'll be like, well, let's talk about your water plan first. Like, do you have all these other small steps taken care of? No, you don't have any of those taken care of. Like, don't even worry about the AR1. Like, I'm not going to try to upsell you on that. Like, that is a very specific role. But if you don't have these other smaller things taken care of, like, case in point, the H2Go. Hey, the H2Go, you can make a Dakin solution to take care of wound cleansing. You can clean surfaces for prepping food. You can clean surfaces. You can clean utensils. You can wash produce with it. You can sterilize water with it. Like, I've got all these different things that I can do with it. And it's not just for a size of 1 quart, 32 ounces, 1 liter, roughly the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just for that unit. I can dose up to a jerry can, 5 gallons at a time. I can dose a 5-gallon pail at a time. And I can dial my doses up and dial my doses back down. So that's an example in my mind of that's a massive force multiplier. Someone shows up bringing one of those with them, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's go. Because I can do a lot more with that than I can, pick the widget.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, Zach, I've definitely very much enjoyed this episode. Was there any other big topics you kind of wanted to discuss, or anything you wanted to hit on?
No, I mean, I agree. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for reaching out and giving me an opportunity to talk about, a couple of these different topics, just as they pertain to what everything ends up looking like, at the organization and the logistics. And I'd say the one thing that I would leave everyone with is kind of what we have done Sorry, I'm running through the house here. What do you have, Cody? Oh, that is super cool.
Mine are dad.
Very cool.
They're not the size of Moses. They're like this tiny.
Featuring
that.
featuring the children.
Featuring the children. And that's I would say that's what I'll leave people with, is from the business perspective. So that's one of my kids, Cody, running up here, and my wife is out here packing packages, going out to customers. That we wanted to be able to do something that ultimately involves our family, and it's not segregating one thing off from the other. And what I did want to leave everyone with is the message behind Cana is that, yes, we want to wake people up to the world of water dangers and make sure that people are prepared. But we also want to leave people with a message of hope and living water, because anyone who drinks the water, the normal water, whether it's clean water, dirty water, follows our protocols, whatever it is, anyone who drinks that water is going to be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that Jesus Christ gives them will never be thirsty again. And so you can find that John 4:13-14. You can find that on all of our products, and on our website. We even have a page up there on living water. So if anyone has questions about what a life with Christ looks like, about that living water, and about the peace that can come from that, I just direct them there. Yeah.
Awesome. I agree with all of that, by all means. Well, Zach, thank you very much for coming on and telling your story, and sharing what's inspired you. Sharing your thoughts and your beliefs in Christ, and hopefully we've given guys good conversation to hopefully go back and build on their own plans and build on their own journey.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Well, that's all I've got, everyone, for episode 43, Water, Business, and Community. As always, train hard, train often.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma